My name is Richard Williams, 76 years old, a retired high school teacher from Detroit. And last night, I held my granddaughter while she trembled in the emergency room, her phone still glowing in her lap, filled with 47 images of how to die. 47, all of them suggested by an algorithm she never even asked for. As a black man who survived segregation, police beatings, and the riots of 1967, I once believed I had faced every enemy life could throw at me, but nothing, not hatred, not poverty, not violence prepared me for the invisible predator that nearly stole my family. My son Marcus, 42, married Lydia, a white woman with kind eyes and the patience of a saint. They built a good life together, raising 2 children, Maya 14 and Jordan 11. 6 months ago, after my wife passed, I moved in with them, thinking I could help with the kids, teach them discipline, love, and how to live outside screens. I was wrong. Completely wrong. 3 hours before I speak these words, Lydia was pounding on the bathroom door, screaming Maya's name. Marcus had already called 911. I stumbled out of bed, disoriented, the hallway spinning as I heard that sound, my granddaughter's voice through the locked door. Not crying, not yelling, just whispering over and over, "Leave me alone." At 11:15 p.m., 2 police officers arrived, one black, one white, both looking uneasy. Marcus's hand shook as he gave permission to break the door down. Lydia slid to the floor, tears cutting through her mascara, and me. I stood frozen, a man who once faced down mobs and fire, now powerless before a locked bathroom door. When it finally burst open, Maya sat on the cold tile floor, her back against the bathtub, knees pressed to her chest. The phone was still in her lap, its glow washing her face, pale and lifeless. Her eyes. They weren't my granddaughter's eyes, not the bright, laughing ones that used to beg me to play basketball with her after dinner. They were empty. Gone somewhere dark. Lydia ran forward, but Maya flinched away. That small movement, that fear of her own mother, shattered something inside me. Marcus picked up the phone. His face turned white. He turned the screen toward me, and I saw why we were standing there, surrounded by flashing lights and horror. 47 posts about self-harm and suicide. 47 digital traps that an algorithm fed her, all because she lingered 3 seconds too long on one sad post. 3 seconds, that's all it took for a machine to learn her pain and weaponize it. The paramedic who knelt beside Maya in the ambulance was young, maybe mid-20s, with kind, tired eyes. She asked us simple questions the way professionals do. Are you hurt? Did you take anything? Can you tell me what happened? Maya only shook her head, then whispered through wet lashes. I couldn't stop. Her fingers were ice cold in mine. She squeezed back, as if that small grip might anchor her to the room. Papa Richard, she breathed. I'm sorry. I wanted to fix it the way I'd fixed other wounds in my life. But this was not a broken bone or a scraped knee. This was something that lived in workrooms. Dee never walked into in labs and servers and offices where engineers wrote code to keep people scrolling. In the bright antiseptic at Detroit. Receiving. I watched monitors blink and held my granddaughter's hand while her family blurred into a collage of grief and disbelief. Lydia sat with mascara tracks carving silent paths down her cheeks. Marcus paced like a caged animal. I felt old and useless and furious, an ugly mix of feeling I'd only recognized during the worst of the riots, when survival meant acting fast, not philosophizing. An hour later, a psychiatrist named Dr. Bennett Combe, reserved, Eyes that had seen too many of these nights sat across from us. She didn't mince words. "She's stable," she said, "not physically harmed tonight, but CS in a severe depressive episode and showing signs consistent with what we call social media addiction. It's not moral weakness, it's a behavioral dependency. I see multiple cases like this every week." She laid out a plan in measured tones: twice weekly therapy, a strict break from social platforms for months, family counseling, and possibly medication if her mood doesn't lift. The words landed like cold stones. "These platforms," Dr. Bennett explained, "use algorithms designed to maximize engagement. They learn emotional responses and show more of what keeps someone watching, and for vulnerable adolescents, that often means more extreme, harmful content." It felt like a lecture and a verdict. I had taught kids for 40 years, stood in classrooms full of restless bodies and brilliant minds, fought for decent textbooks and safe playgrounds. I had taught them how to read, how to argue, how to hold their heads up in a world that tried to keep them down, but I'd never had to teach them how to fight a machine. On the ride home later that night, my mind skittered through old memories, as if searching for a manual I'd never been given. I remembered the lunch counters, the marches, the school days interrupted by tanks rolling down streets, enemies I could name and face. Those battles had faces, addresses, organizing meetings. You could march, you could shout, you could build alliances. This felt different. This opponent had no address. It lived in code and coffers, in attention metrics and ad revenue. It was omnipresent and intimate at once. Dr. Bennett said something else that stayed with me. "This isn't about blame. It's about understanding how the system manipulates development. For many of these kids, their brains are still wiring social validation. The algorithm exploits that." Hearing that stripped away my last comforts, the idea that love and common sense alone could shield a child. That night I vowed two things. First, I would learn what this enemy was and how it worked. Second, I would not let Maya face it alone. I had taught children to read and to dream. I would learn to read algorithms, if that is what it took. But to understand how we ended up in that bathroom at midnight, I needed to go back 6 months. Earlier to the night, I first walked into a middle school auditorium and heard the words that should have woken every parent in the room. 6 months before that night in the hospital, I sat on a hard metal chair inside the auditorium of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School. The stage smelled faintly of varnish and old curtains. I'd come to the parent-teacher meeting because Marcus and Lydia were both out of town for a work conference in Chicago. They'd asked me to attend in their place, a simple errand. I thought, listen politely, take notes, maybe brag a little about Maya's grades. I had done this kind of thing for decades when Marcus was young. Nothing ever changed. Announcements about upcoming field trips, fundraising drives, maybe a speech about attendance. But that night was different. The moment the principal stepped up to the mic. Her name was Principal Henderson, a tall black woman in her late 50s whose presence commanded silence before she even spoke. Her expression carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken worries. "Good evening," she began, her voice firm. "Thank you for coming on short notice. I called this meeting because we have a crisis in our school and I need every parent here to understand just how serious it is." The room shifted. Fidgeting stopped. Parents leaned forward. "In the past year," she said, 3 of our students attempted suicide. All girls, all between 13 and 14 years old. All survived, and all 3 had one thing in common: their social media activity. The silence that followed was heavy. suffocating. She clicked a remote and a projector came to life behind her. Numbers filled the screen, percentages, graphs, arrows pointing down. 72% of our 8th grade girls say Instagram makes them feel worse about themselves. 58% have seen content about self-harm in the past month. 40% spend more than 4 hours a day online. These are not national figures. These are your daughters. Our daughters. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A woman near me, white, early 40s, raised her hand, her voice trembling. My daughter spends all day on her phone. When I tried taking it away, she screamed like I was killing her. Said she'd lose all her friends. I gave it back after 2 days. I couldn't stand it. Several parents nodded. I heard a soft Mihija whispered in Spanish from the row behind me, a mother, confiding her own quiet panic. Principal Henderson pressed on. I'm not here to tell you to throw away your child's phone. I'm here to tell you that what we are facing is not normal. These platforms are engineered for addiction. They learn your child's fears, insecurities, and emotions, and they feed them content that keeps them trapped. Her voice cracked just once when she said, "These girls are being hunted, not by strangers in dark alleys, but by algorithms written by adults who know exactly what buttons to press." I should have felt alarmed. I should have gone home that night and checked Maya's phone immediately. But as I sat in that crowd, I felt something else, relief. Maya wasn't like those girls. She was smart, athletic, confident. She played basketball, earned straight A's, and laughed easily. Surely, she was fine. I drove home that evening through the quiet Detroit suburbs, convincing myself that our family was safe from whatever darkness was creeping into other homes. I parked in the driveway, still thinking about the principal's words. When I walked inside, Maya was sitting at the dinner table, fork in hand, eyes locked on her phone. "Hey sweetheart," I said, taking a seat across from her. "How was your day?" "Fine, Papa Richard. Just finishing something real quick," she murmured, thumbs moving at lightning speed. Her food sat untouched, the glow of her screen painting her face pale blue. I should have seen it then, but I didn't. Later that same night, after Maya had gone to bed, I sat in the quiet living room with the school handouts. Principal Henderson had passed out. The title on the first page read, "Warning Signs of Digital Addiction." I skimmed the list. Irritability when the phone is taken away, secretive behavior about usage, declining interest in hobbies, mood swings, trouble sleeping, loss of real-world friendships. I smiled faintly, shook my head, and folded the papers away. That's not Maya, I thought. She's strong. She's disciplined. It was an easy lie to believe, the kind that comforts you just enough to do nothing. That night, I said a quiet prayer for the girls Principal Henderson had mentioned, the ones who'd nearly taken their lives, and I fell asleep grateful that my family didn't have those kinds of problems. But 2 weeks later, I began to notice it. Subtle creeping changes that didn't fit the Maya I knew. Every Saturday since I'd moved in, Maya and I had a ritual. At 9 sharp we'd head out back to shoot hoops, to gather old school training. I'd show her how to dribble low, keep her eyes up, and shoot with rhythm, not power. She loved those mornings, the ball, the laughter, the way she'd call me Coach Grandpa just to make me grin. That first Saturday in June, I walked outside with the ball under my arm, waiting like always. The sun climbed higher. No Maya. At 9:30, I went back inside and found her on the couch, still in her pajamas, face half lit by her phone screen. Morning, champ, I said gently. We're running late for our game. She didn't even look up. I'm tired today, Papa, maybe next weekend. It hit me strange. Maya never skipped practice, but I shrugged it off. Kids get tired. One Saturday didn't mean anything. The next weekend, same thing. The weekend after that, dash again by July. Our routine was dead. The basketball in the garage sat deflated, covered in dust. The hoop in the yard gathered spot. She started eating alone in her room more often. The sound of her laughter at dinner disappeared, and when she did talk, it was half-hearted, distracted. When I passed by her door at night, I'd see the faint blue glow spilling out from underneath. Sometimes I'd hear the quiet buzz of notifications, other times muffled crying. One night, I stood outside her door at 1 a.m., hand hovering near the knob. Maya, sweetheart, you okay? I asked softly. The crying stopped instantly. I'm fine, she said, her voice steady but calm. Just watching a sad video. Want to talk? I asked. Double quotes, no. Maybe tomorrow. I walked back to my room with a pit in my stomach. In my generation, when a child cried behind a closed door, you opened it, you entered. But the world had changed. Parents now called it respecting privacy. So I respected it, and it nearly cost her everything. That night still lives inside me like a scar. I can touch, but never heal. It was late 2 in the morning and the house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock. I couldn't sleep. The kind of restlessness that old age brings, when memories and worries blur together until they pull you out of bed. As I passed Maya's room, I noticed the light again, that blue glow leaking out from under the door, painting the hallway in ghostly color. I hesitated. Every modern parenting article I'd ever heard, Lydia Quat screamed in my head. Respect boundaries. Don't invade trust. But boundaries don't mean much when your gut tells you a child is drowning. I turned the handle and opened the door quietly. Maya was lying in bed, eyes wide open, the light from her phone casting hard shadows across her face. The screen changed images every second, photos, videos, quotes, all blending into one endless stream of despair. Words like empty, worthless, disappear. Her thumb scrolled with mechanical rhythm, even as tears streaked down her cheeks. She didn't notice me at first. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wild, like she'd been caught doing something shameful but couldn't even explain why. Maya, I whispered. She froze. Papa, please don't, she said quickly, holding the phone tight to her chest. I'm fine. No, you're not. I took a slow step forward. Please let me see what's on there. She shook her head violently, curling away from me. You won't understand. Nobody understands. The desperation in her voice hit me like a punch. I'd heard it before from students back in Detroit who hid bruises under sleeves, or from kids who flinched when someone raised a voice. That kind of pain doesn't lie. I knelt beside her bed. Sweetheart, I'm not mad. I just need to help you. But she turned toward the wall, silent. The scrolling stopped, and the glow dimmed as the phone went dark in her grip. After a long pause, I stood and whispered, "Good night, Maya." My throat burned. I left the door, cracked, listening for movement. But all I heard was the soft rhythm of her quiet sobs. When dawn came, I made a decision. I would look at that phone, not out of curiosity, out of fear. So later that night, when everyone was asleep, I crept into the kitchen, where she always left it charging. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The lock screen was still glowing, dash unlocked. Maybe she'd fallen asleep mid-scroll. For a moment I considered putting it back. Then I remembered her voice flat, hollow, saying nobody understands. I opened the app and in that instant, the world I thought I knew dissolved into something far darker. The feed wasn't random. It was precise, deliberate, and merciless. Every post targeted one thing, her pain. Girls who looked like they were starving. Posts with captions like, "Stay strong, hunger is discipline." Photos of razor blades arranged like art. Threads about vanishing quietly. The comments praised them all. "Your goals so perfect. Wish I had your control." And tucked between those posts were hundreds of hearts, Maya's hearts. That's when I understood. She hadn't stumbled into this. She'd been guided. I remember gripping that phone so tightly my fingers ached. The glow of the screen felt almost alive, humming faintly in my hand like it was aware of being caught. What I saw scrolling down that feed didn't just horrify me, it betrayed me. Because I had trusted the world that created it. I had trusted the idea that our children were safer now than we were growing up. I scrolled past one image, then another. A girl's ribs like piano keys beneath her skin. Captioned, "Finally under 100 pounds. Worth it." A quote written over a pale arm. "Pain reminds you you're still here." A looping video of pills spilling like candy with hearts in the comments. Each post worse than the one before. I wasn't looking at strangers anymore. Was looking at the path that had been laid for Maya to follow, step by step. Every heart she tapped, every second she lingered. The algorithm learned what made her hurt. It fed her that pain like medicine. I checked her saved posts, 120-7. All the same kind of sickness. How to skip meals. How to hide food from parents. How to fake smiles. There was one post that broke me completely. A picture of a hand clutching a half-empty glass of water. The caption read, "Stay strong. You don't need food, just control." Below it, one familiar username, Maya. My stomach turned. Then I opened her messages. There was a group chat with 5 other girls. The title read, "The Challenge." I clicked it open and started reading. Day 1. "Let's do it together. No food, just water. We're strong." Day 3. I almost passed out in gym class, but I didn't give in. Maya's reply, "Made it through day 3 too. Told my family I already ate. They believed me." I stared at those words so long I could barely breathe. She had looked me in the eye at dinner that week, smiled politely, and said she'd already eaten, and I'd believed her, because I wanted to. I read the rest of the thread. One girl dropped out, saying she felt weak. The others cheered her anyway, but the tone was competitive. Achievement through starvation. Discipline through pain. The dates were from July weeks ago. That was when Maya had started sleeping more, looking pale, skipping our basketball mornings. We'd all noticed, but we told ourselves it was nothing. I put the phone down on the counter and stared at the wall. For the first time in years, I felt fear that had no shape, something too large to fight with fists or lectures. When you've lived long enough, you learn the signs of danger. You can feel it in your gut. But this danger had no sound, no smell, no face. It lived in code. It lived in Maya's hands. At dawn I decided I'd show Marcus and Lydia everything. We would intervene together, but I had no idea that the confrontation would not only divide us, it would test what kind of family we really were. By the time the sun had set the next day, I'd rehearsed what I would say at least a dozen times. I wanted to choose every word carefully to make them hear me, not react to me. That's the problem with family talks. Truth often sounds like accusation even when it's meant as protection. After dinner, I asked Marcus and Lydia to sit in the living room. The TV was off, the lights dim, the house unnervingly still. I had Maya's screenshot saved on my own phone, proof. Not speculation, my hands didn't shake, but my heart felt like it was hammering through my ribs. I need to talk to you both, I began. And I need you to listen before reacting. Lydia, still in her work clothes, set down her wine glass. Is Maya okay? Did something happen? I took a deep breath. Last night I looked through her phone. The silence hit hard. Marcus froze. Lydia blinked, her expression turning from concern to disbelief. You what? She said sharply. You went through her phone. That's a massive invasion of privacy, Richard. I expected that. I'd even prepared for it. So I didn't argue, I just handed Marcus my phone. Scrolled through these, I said quietly. Then tell me if I was wrong. He started swiping. The color drained from his face. Lydia leaned over, and as the images flickered before her eyes, her outrage faltered. Her lips parted slightly. These are... She whispered, these are all saved by her. Yes, I said. 127 of them. Every post about starving, hurting, or disappearing, she saved them. There's also a group chat, a 7-day water fast. She made it to day 5. Marcus looked up, his voice shaking. 5 days without food. Richard, are you sure? I read it myself. She'll lead to us. Said she'd eaten. We believed her. Lydia scrolled faster now, eyes darting across the screen. But she's not overweight, she muttered, more to herself than to me. She's beautiful. Why would she think she isn't? I pointed to one of the cruel comments under Maya's photo. Maybe skip the burger next time. Do you even know what calories are? You'd look better thinner. Lydia covered her mouth. These are kids saying this, and algorithms showing her more of it, I said bitterly. The system learns what hurts her hand, then it feeds her more of that pain, because it keeps her scrolling, and scrolling makes them money. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Marcus stood and started pacing, the same way I used to when I needed to think fast. We have to do something, he said finally. Delete her apps, take her phone, something. Lydia looked up sharply. Wait, we can't just take it from her. That's her lifeline. She feels trapped at... I leaned forward. Lydia, this isn't about betrayal. This is about survival. She's addicted. You don't ask an addict politely to stop using, you intervene. She's not an addict. Lydia snapped. She's a 14-year-old girl going through a hard time. Marcus rubbed his temples. She's not okay. You saw those pictures. But Lydia's voice broke, trembling with fear. If we take it away, she hates us. She shut down completely. Don't you see? We'll lose her. I exhaled slowly. If we do nothing, we might lose her anyway. That's when I realized we weren't just talking about Maya's phone. We were talking about Pa who had it, who was willing to use it, and who was too afraid of breaking love to save it. The next evening felt like standing on a cliff, waiting for the storm to hit taut. No one spoke much during dinner. The clinking of forks and the faint hum of the refrigerator were the only sounds between us. Maya chatted casually about school, unaware that the air around her had thickened with dread. Marcus cleared his throat halfway through the meal. Maya, sweetheart, he began carefully. We need to talk to you about something after dinner. She froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. Okay, she said slowly. Did I do something? Lydia forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just a family talk, honey. But Maya wasn't stupid. She'd grown up watching adults try to soften blows. Her eyes narrowed. Is this about my grades or my phone? No one answered. That silence said everything. After dinner, we sat in the living room, the three of us across from her. She sat small on the couch, arms folded tightly around her phone like it was oxygen. Marcus started gently. Maya, we've seen some things on your phone that worry us. Her eyes widened, then darkened. You went through my phone. Lydia tried to interject. Sweetheart, please just listen. No, Maya's voice cracked with betrayal. You had no right. That's my private stuff. You, Marcus cut in, his tone firm but trembling. Maya, stop. This isn't about punishing you. It's about helping you. I stepped forward, speaking quietly but clearly. We saw what you've been looking at, Maya. We know about the posts, the challenges. The messages. We know. The fury drained from her face, replaced by shock and then fear. You don't understand, she whispered. It's not what you think. I think it's exactly what we think, Marcus said softly. We're scared for you. You've been hurting, and we didn't see it. Maya looked down, shaking her head. You can't help me. Nobody can. It's just how things are now. Lydia reached for her hand. Baby, that's not true. Maya snatched it back. Don't call me that. You're all acting crazy. Then came the breaking point. Marcus held out his hand. Give me the phone, Maya. Her breath hitched. What? We're taking it for a while, he said. Just until we can get you help. This isn't forever. Her eyes widened like I'd told her she'd never see sunlight again. You can't do that. It's mine. You gave it to me. Maya, I said softly. You're sick. You're not thinking clearly. We love you too much to let this go on. She stood up shaking. You think taking my phone will fix me? You're going to make everything worse. When Marcus reached out again, she bolted for the hallway. Lydia caught her arm, pleading, Maya, please, just. But Maya screamed. A raw animal sound that made every hair on my arms stand up. You ruined everything. I hate you. All of you. Then she threw the phone down on the floor so hard that the screen spider-webbed into 1,000 cracks. She ran to her room and slammed the door. The echo hung in the silence. Lydia sat down hard on the couch, sobbing quietly. Marcus looked at the shattered phone and whispered, We did the right thing, right? I looked at the fragments scattered across the rug and said the only truth I knew. We just declared war on something none of us understand. The house changed that night. It wasn't just the silence after the shouting. It was something heavier, like the air itself had turned thick. You could almost hear the hum of the absence, that missing glow that had once lived in Maya's hands. For the first hour, she stayed locked in her room. No crying, no sound, just a faint creak of the floorboards as she paced. Lydia sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing, her untouched tea going cold. Marcus leaned against the counter, rubbing his forehead. I just stood by the window, listening, waiting for the storm to start. By midnight it did. Maya came downstairs, eyes red and wild. Can I just have it for 5 minutes? She pleaded. Please, Dad. I just need to tell people I'm okay. They're going to think something happened to me. Marcus shook his head, voice calm but firm. You can use the house phone tomorrow to call a few friends, but you're not getting that phone back tonight. Her voice broke into a sharp cry. You don't get it. I'll lose everything. Everyone will move on without me. Lydia tried to reach for her, but Maya backed away like her mother's hand was fire. You're ruining my life, she hissed, before running back upstairs. The next morning, she didn't come down for breakfast. When Lydia took a tray of food to her room, it came back untouched. By afternoon she was shaking, not from fear or anger, but from withdrawal. Her hands trembled as she poured a glass of water, spilling half of it. Her eyes were sunken, her lips pale. I just need to check it once, she begged. Just one time, please. That word please hit different. It wasn't attitude or manipulation, it was desperation. The same tone I'd heard decades ago from kids hooked on drugs, begging for one last fix. You're going to feel worse before you feel better, I told her gently. Your brain's been trained to need that screen. This is the part where you fight back. She laughed bitterly, wiping tears off her face. You think this is about a screen. You don't understand anything. It's not the phone needs me. She slammed her door before I could answer. That evening Marcus found her in the hallway, sitting on the floor, hugging her knees, whispering to herself, They're forgetting me. They're all forgetting me. He crouched beside her. No one's forgetting you, baby. Yes, they are, she sobbed. I can't see them. I can't talk to them. They'll move on. They'll replace me. That was the moment I finally understood. Maya wasn't afraid of being alone. She was terrified of disappearing. The next night I found her searching behind the couch cushions, under chairs, even inside drawers. What are you doing? I asked quietly. I can't sleep, she said, her voice hollow. I just keep thinking about it, about what I'm missing. I feel like I am vanishing. She sat down hard, shaking. Papa, I can't make my brain stop wanting it. I put an arm around her shoulders. That's not your fault, Maya. They built it that way. For the first time since we took the phone, she didn't pull away. She leaned into me, trembling. Then how do I make it stop? She whispered. I didn't have an answer. All I could do was hold her until she finally fell asleep on my shoulder, the weight of her exhaustion pressing into me like lead. For a few days things seemed calmer, almost too calm. Maya stayed in her room most of the time, sleeping late, drawing in her sketchbook, reading old novels Lydia brought home from the library. She barely spoke at dinner, but she ate again, which felt like a small miracle. Lydia clung to that progress as proof that the worst had passed. See, she said one morning, forcing a smile as she poured coffee. She's adjusting. We just needed to give her space. Marcus didn't look convinced. It feels quiet, he murmured. Too quiet. He was right. Addicts don't surrender. They strategize. And Maya was smarter than we gave her credit for. It started with little things. The flicker of blue light under her door at midnight. The faint hum of electronics when she was supposed to be asleep. At first I thought I was imagining it. But on the third night when I opened her door just enough to peek in, I saw it. The dim glow of a second device, not her shattered phone, a tablet. She'd found a loophole. The next morning I asked Lydia about it. Her face fell. Oh no, I forgot there's an old iPad in the study. I didn't even think she knew where it was. Marcus slammed his coffee mug down so hard it cracked. You forgot. She's been doing better, Lydia snapped, her voice rising with guilt. I thought she was reading or journaling. I wanted to believe. I raised a hand. Blame won't fix this. We need to handle it now, together. That evening Marcus searched Maya's room while she was in the shower. He found the iPad under her mattress wrapped in a hoodie. The battery was still warm when she came out, hair wet and face pale. She froze the moment she saw him holding it. Maya, he said quietly, What is this? Her face crumpled instantly. You went through my room. Answer me. She didn't. She just reached out, tears filling her eyes. Double quotes. Please just give it back. I can't know. His voice cracked. But he didn't falter. We've been through this. You can't keep doing this to yourself. She let out a sharp, bitter laugh through tears. You don't get it. This is all I have. My friends are there. My life is there. You took everything, and now you want to take this too. Lydia stepped forward, crying openly. We're not taking your life, baby. We're trying to give it back. Maya screamed, not in anger this time, but in agony. It's not yours to give back. Then she ran past them, barefoot, out the front door into the night. Marcus sprinted after her, yelling her name into the dark. The neighborhood was quiet, save for the hum of streetlights. I followed as fast as my old legs would allow, my heart pounding with dread. We found her 10 minutes later, sitting on the curb at the corner, hugging her knees, shivering under the streetlight's glow. When we reached her, she didn't resist. She just whispered, I don't know who I am without it. And that's when I realized this wasn't about a device anymore. The phone, the apps, the screens, they weren't the addiction. They were the mirror. The thing showing her a version of herself that didn't really exist, but that she couldn't live without. That night, after Marcus carried Maya back inside, the house felt colder than ever. Lydia wrapped a blanket around her, whispering, You're safe, sweetheart, over and over like a prayer. But safety wasn't what Maya needed anymore. She needed identity. The screen had stolen it, piece by piece, replacing it with illusions and filters and strangers who told her what to hate about herself. We sat in silence for a long time. Marcus stared at the floor, guilt written all over his face. Lydia's hand never left Maya's shoulder, though the girl stared straight ahead, eyes glazed, as if still watching an invisible feed. I can't do this, Lydia whispered finally. We're losing her. She's here, but she's gone. She's not gone, I said. She's buried, and we're going to dig her out. They both looked at me, desperate for something to believe in. I didn't have a plan, just instinct, the same instinct that had once kept me alive in riots and classrooms filled with chaos. When systems failed, community had always been the cure. So the next morning I started small. At breakfast I pushed a glass of orange juice toward Maya and said, You and I have somewhere to be today. She blinked, wary. Out, I said simply. And don't worry, no one there will ask for your password. We drove to the park, the same cracked court where I used to take Marcus when he was her age. The nets were torn. The paint faded, but the rim still stood. I held out a basketball, old but solid. Remember this? I asked her. She shrugged. I'm not really in the mood. Then don't play. Just stand there with me for a while. She did. Then, slowly, she reached out and took the ball. Her first shot bounced off the rim, rolling into the grass. I jogged after it slower than I used to, but steady. When I tossed it back, she almost smiled. Almost. We stayed there an hour, saying little, but each bounce of that ball was a heartbeat returning. That afternoon, I caught her helping Lydia cook dinner. Nothing big, just chopping vegetables, her sleeves rolled up, humming softly. I didn't interrupt. I just watched from the doorway, feeling something I hadn't in months. Hope. That night, she came into the living room where Marcus and I were watching an old basketball game. Papa, she said quietly, can I sit with you guys? I nodded. She curled up beside me, her head resting against my shoulder. Do you miss it? I asked. Every second, she said honestly. But it's weird. I also don't. That's withdrawal turning into recovery, I said gently. The trick is to keep moving, even when it hurts. She looked at the screen, watching the players run. It's just so quiet now. My head feels loud. That's where you start listening, I told her. Not to them, to yourself. She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. For the first time in weeks she wasn't scrolling. She was present. The next few weeks were fragile, a kind of peace that feels borrowed rather than earned. Maya was improving, at least on the surface. She started helping Lydia in the garden, went to therapy twice a week with Dr. Bennett, and even joined Marcus and me for morning walks around the block. There were moments when I caught her smiling again, unguarded, soft. But addiction doesn't die easily. It waits patient, silent and clever. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. Lydia had let Maya borrow her laptop for a school project, a small gesture of trust. She needs to feel normal again, Lydia had said. I wanted to argue, but I didn't. You can't raise children in fear forever, I told myself. By evening Maya was in her room, supposedly writing an essay. The house smelled of Lydia's stew, the kind she made when she was trying to fill the rooms with warmth. For the first time in months, dinner almost felt normal. Almost halfway through the meal, I noticed a change in Maya's posture. Her fork stilled midair, her eyes unfocused, her breathing quickened. Lydia was talking about something at work, but Maya wasn't listening. Her mind was somewhere else. Maya, I said gently. Everything okay? She blinked hard, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Double quotes, yeah. Just tired. But after dinner, I saw her slip back to her room. An hour later, when Marcus went to say goodnight, her door was locked again. The same old blue light seeped through the crack under it. He knocked softly. Maya, you awake? No answer. He opened the door anyway. She was sitting on the bed. Lydia's laptop open, tears streaking down her face. When she saw Marcus, she slammed it shut like she'd and burned Maya. He said carefully, "What are you looking at?" "Nothing," she snapped. "I was doing homework." "Then why are you crying?" "Because you're all watching me like I'm some kind of freak." She stood up, trembling with anger and shame, and that's when I walked in. Her eyes darted between us, trapped, cornered. She broke first. It was just a message. She screamed. "Someone from my old group chat found me. They said they missed me, that I disappeared, that I abandoned them." Marcus's voice cracked. "Maya, those girls aren't your friends. They're part of what hurt you." "No," she shouted, tears streaming. "They're the only ones who get me. They're the only ones who ever did." Lydia, standing behind me, began to cry silently. I took a slow step forward. "What did the message say?" She hesitated, then whispered, "They're starting another challenge." The room went still. I walked over, opened the laptop gently, and read the message. It was short. Just a few sentences from one of the usernames I'd seen before. "We're doing it again. 7 days. Water only. You'll feel better when you take control again. We miss you, Maya. Don't let them brainwash you." Marcus shut his eyes, his jaw clenched tight. Lydia turned away, sobbing. Maya's voice broke into a whisper. "I wasn't going to do it. I just needed to see if they remembered me." I reached for her hand. "Listen to me, Maya. You don't need their kind of remembering. That's not friendship, that's poison dressed up as belonging. but she looked at me, her face streaked with tears, and said words that froze me where I stood. Then why does the poison feel like home? Maya's question lingered in my mind for days. Then why does the poison feel like home? It wasn't just a cry for help, it was a diagnosis. She didn't miss the challenges or the posts themselves. She missed belonging, the illusion of being seen, the constant validation that told her she existed, even when it was killing her. That weekend I told Marcus and Lydia what I'd been thinking. We can't just take things away from her, I said. We have to replace what she lost. The algorithm gave her connection, community, and meaning, fake ones. Sure, but powerful. We need to build her real versions of those. Marcus frowned. So what? Sign her up for more therapy? No, I said firmly. Something real, something she can feel, not talk about. I spent that night thinking about what real used to mean. When I was young, we didn't need reminders to go outside. The streets themselves demanded it. The world was smaller, sharper, harder to ignore. I couldn't rebuild that world for Maya, but maybe I could give her a piece of it. The next morning, I walked into her room holding the basketball. Get dressed, I said simply. She groaned. Papa, not again. I'm tired. I smiled. That's what you said last time. Remember, you ended up hitting 7 free throws in a row. She sighed but got up anyway. The sun was bright that day, the kind that makes the pavement shimmer. The air smelled like cut grass and summer dot. I bounced the ball toward her, and she caught it, fumbled, then laughed. A real laugh, small but true. For the first time in months, the sound didn't hurt. That we started with basics. Dribbling, footwork. The same moves I'd taught Marcus years ago. Every shot she missed, she grumbled. Every one she made, she smiled a little wider. After 20 minutes, she was sweating, panting, alive. When she finally collapsed onto the grass, she looked up at the sky and said quietly, "It's weird. I didn't think I could feel good again without it." "You just did," I said. Later that day, she asked if she could invite a few classmates over to play. Lydia and Marcus exchanged hesitant glances, but I nodded before they could object. 3 girls came, no phones, just sneakers and laughter and half-baked trash talk. They weren't part of her online crowd. They were the kind of friends she'd been too distracted to notice before. For 2 hours, our backyard sounded like childhood again. Sneakers, squeaking girls shouting, the rhythm of a ball bouncing off concrete. After they left, Maya came into the kitchen, hair messy, cheeks flushed. "I forgot what it felt like to laugh that hard," she said. "That's the trick," I told her. "Keep remembering." But that night, after she went to bed, I saw Lydia sitting at the table with her laptop open. Her face was pale. "What's wrong?" I asked. She turned the screen toward me. A news article, headline bold and cold. Teen suicide linked to viral fasting trend. Parents urged to monitor social media use. My chest tightened as I read the name of one of the girls from Maya's old group chat, dead 15 years old, and in that instant I realized our fight wasn't over, it was just beginning. The next morning started quiet. Almost tender sunlight spilled through the curtains, and the smell of pancakes filled the kitchen. Lydia was humming softly, the kind of sound that means someone is trying too hard to hold peace together. I almost thought we might make it through breakfast without breaking. Almost. Maya shuffled in her hair a mess. "Still wearing yesterday's hoodie?" "Morning," she mumbled, sitting at the table. Her voice sounded normal, ordinary. Then Lydia glanced at Mita, silent kind of glance that says you have to tell her, Maya. I began gently. "There's something you need to know." Her fork paused midair. "What?" I hesitated. "One of the girls from your old chat group. Her name was Kayla." "Right." Maya's eyes flickered. cautious. Yeah, wife. I took a breath. She passed away. It was in the news last night. For a moment, the room didn't move. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. Then Maya's lips parted in disbelief. No, that's not. She wouldn't. Lydia reached across the table, but Maya pushed her hand away, shaking her head violently. No, she was fine last week. She messaged me. She said she was fine. Tears welled in her eyes, and before anyone could speak, she stood up, chair scraping across the floor, and ran to her room. The slam of the door echoed down the hallway. Marcus closed his eyes, whispering, "God help us." I followed a few minutes later. Her door was locked, but I could hear muffled sobs. "Maya," I said softly through the wood, "I know it hurts." Her voice came back cracked, jagged. "You don't know anything, Papa. She was my friend. I didn't even get to say goodbye." "I know you feel like you lost her," I said, "but she was already lost to something much bigger." "Sweetheart, no," she shouted. "You don't get it. We were supposed to help each other. I promised her I'd do better, that I'd come back when I was stronger. Now she's gone because I left." Her voice broke completely. I could hear the thud of her fists against the mattress, the raw grief of a child blaming herself for the world's cruelty. "Maya," I said quietly, my throat burning, "listen to me. The thing that took Kalitz, the same thing that tried to take you, but you survived. That's not something to feel guilty about. That's something to fight with." Silence. Then, softer, "Fight what?" "The poison," I said. "The system that made her believe pain was power." I waited. A minute passed, then the door creaked open. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes swollen, her voice barely a whisper. "What's the point of fighting something that big?" "Because," I said, "somebody has to, and maybe it has to start with us." She stared at me for a long moment, then she nodded once, weak but real. "Then I want to fight too." That night I sat in the living room with Marcus and Lydia and said the words that would change everything. "It's time we stop reacting and start exposing this. If the world won't protect kids like Maya, then we will." It started like any ordinary search. A laptop on the kitchen table, a pot of coffee, a few open tabs. But within an hour, it felt less like research and more like uncovering a crime scene hidden in plain sight. Marcus sat beside me, typing furiously, while Lydia read articles aloud. "Listen to this," she said, scrolling through a report. Internal whistleblower documents show engineers were aware that their algorithm increased teen depression rates by as much as 32%, but executives decided not to change it, fearing lower engagement metrics. Marcus cursed under his breath. They knew. I leaned forward, reading the highlighted lines. They didn't just know. They designed it that way. We learned that every second Maya spent hesitating on a sad post, every like, every pause, every scroll was being recorded, analyzed, and fed back to her as bait. The more she hurt, the more she engaged. The more she engaged, the more valuable she became. Her pain was profitable. Lydia shook her head, tears brimming. "They call it emotional targeting. How is that even legal?" "It's not about legal," Marcus said quietly. "It's about money. We spent hours digging deeper, reading research papers, interviews, lawsuits. We found story after story. Children as young as 12 falling into eating disorders, anxiety spirals, and suicide attempts triggered by recommended content. Parents who'd found their kids' screens filled with darkness disguised as community. Each click pulled us deeper into a labyrinth of polished evil, smiling tech executives, clean offices, bright colors, all masking a truth as old as greed, At one point, Lydia whispered, "What if we told Maya everything?" "No," I said immediately. "Not yet. She's still healing. This could destroy what little trust she has left in the world." Marcus looked up from his laptop. "Then what do we do?" I stared at the screen, an image of a social media CEO testifying before Congress. Hand raised, face expressionless. I thought of Kayla, of Maya's trembling voice asking, "What's the point of fighting something that big?" "We make people listen," I said finally. "We tell them what they've done. Not as parents, not as teachers, as witnesses." Lydia frowned. "You think anyone will care? People hear these stories all the time. They'll care if they see it," I said. "If we show them what it looks like when an algorithm kills kindness and replaces it with control." The next day, I called a local journalist, a former student of mine, now working for the Detroit Tribune. When I told him what had happened to Maya and what we'd found, he went silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Mr. Williams, this story could change everything, but you need to be ready. Once it's out, they'll come after you. The company, the trolls, they'll make it ugly." I looked out the window at Maya sitting on the porch, sketching quietly under the afternoon sun. "They already made it ugly," I said. "We're just showing the truth." That evening we began organizing the evidence: screenshots, chat logs, algorithm reports, even Maya's testimony with her consent. It felt like building a case against a ghost, but for the first time I saw something new in my son's face: purpose. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were fighting back. The story went live on a Friday morning under a headline that burned across the front page: "Inside the algorithm, how social media preys on teenage pain." Beneath it was a photo of Maya, her face blurred for privacy, but her words printed in bold. It felt like the app knew when I was sad. It kept feeding me things that made me feel worse. By noon it was everywhere. Talk radio, Twitter, morning news shows. For a moment we believed we had done something good. Something righteous. Maya sat beside me at the kitchen table, reading parts of the article with trembling hands. "It feels weird," she said softly, "like people finally see what happened, but also like they're staring at me." I told her, "Sometimes the truth feels like exposure, but it's how healing begins, not just for you, but for everyone who's been through the same thing." By evening the messages began. Not all were kind. The article's comment section filled fast praise from parents, confessions from teens who said they'd lived through the same horror, but scattered between them were the others. "Stop blaming technology for bad parenting. If your daughter's that weak, maybe she wasn't meant for the real world. Fake story. Attention-seeking family." Lydia read a few before slamming the laptop shut. "Monsters," she whispered. "How can people say things like this after what we've been through?" Marcus clenched his fists because they don't want to believe it could be them. But the worst wasn't from the strangers, it was from the company itself. That same night a statement appeared online. Clean, corporate, carefully worded. "We are deeply saddened to hear about this family's experience, but our research shows no causal link between our platform and mental health outcomes. We continue to prioritize user safety and emotional well-being." It read like a condolence card written by a machine. And then the backlash. Within hours, our names began trending locally. News vans parked outside. Anonymous emails filled Marcus's inbox. Lydia got calls from numbers she didn't recognize. One message read, "You're ruining innovation for everyone." Another, "Maybe you should have just been better parents." I tried to shield Maya from it all, but she saw enough to know. Her shoulders began to tighten again, her eyes distant. "See," she said bitterly, "they still win. They always win. That night I sat with her on the porch. The glow of city lights flickered in the distance, and I could see her reflection in the glass door older somehow, more aware of the world's cruelty. Maya, I said softly, you told your truth. That's power. But power doesn't always feel safe. She didn't look at me. So what happens now? I sighed. Now they'll try to bury us, pretend we're just noise, but noise has a way of turning into thunder. The next morning, the journalist called. His voice was tense. Mr. Williams, someone leaked our emails. The company's PR team is spinning it. They're saying you exaggerated. They're sending lawyers after us. Double quotes. Marcus took the phone from me. Let them, he said coldly. They can't erase what's true. But by that evening our internet connection slowed to a crawl. Our home devices glitched. Lydia's social media accounts suddenly locked. Someone or something was pushing back. I looked at the flickering router light and felt that old familiar chill, the sense of being watched by something too big to see. For the first time in months, fear returned, not for Maya's safety this time, but for what we had unleashed. By Monday morning, it wasn't just online anymore. The whispers had crossed into the real world. Marcus went to work to find his boss waiting at his desk, face unreadable. We've received some concerning attention, he said carefully. You understand your name is all over the internet, right? This company can't afford controversy. Marcus came home early, jaw-tied. They didn't fire me, he said flatly, but they made it clear I'm on thin ice. Lydia wasn't spared either. A few of her clients had pulled contracts until things settled. People who'd hugged her at church the week before now avoided her eyes in the grocery store. The story had made us visibly, and visibility is a dangerous thing when the machine decides you're inconvenient. Even Maya felt it at school. Classmates whispered, one boy muttered algorithm girl under his breath in the hallway. Another joked, hey Maya, still fasting for likes. She came home early that day, face pale, eyes shining with tears. You said telling the truth would help people, she said, voice trembling, but now everyone hates me. No, I told her gently, they fear you, that's different. But fear felt no better than hate. That evening while Lydia tried to calm Maya down, I stepped outside onto the porch, needing air. My old student, the journalist, called again. His tone was grim. Mr. Williams, they're using bots now. Thousands of fake accounts flooding our posts. Push in a new hashtag calling the story a hoax. They're even spamming your names. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tight. How can they get away with this? Because they own the platforms we're trying to fight, he said. They controlled the narrative. We're shouting in a hurricane for the first time. I doubted myself. Not the story. Not Maya's pain, but the idea that truth could survive in a world where lies were engineered for profit. When I came back inside, Lydia was pacing, tears streaking her cheeks. She locked herself in the bathroom again. She whispered, said she just needs to think. My heart nearly stopped. I rushed to the door. Maya, it's Papa. Talk to me. No answer. Maya, Lydia's voice cracked as she pounded on the door. Then the sound of something small and soft hitting the tile. Marcus kicked the door open and for 1 second time froze. Maya sat on the floor, back against the wall, head bowed but alive. Tears streamed down her face. In her hand was a small bottle of sleeping pills, unopened. When she looked up, her voice was steady, but her eyes were broken. I wasn't going to do it, she said quietly. I just wanted to see if I could stop myself. Lydia dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around her. Don't you ever scare us like that again, she sobbed. Maya's whisper barely carried. I just wanted the noise to stop. I knelt beside her, heart pounding. Then let's make new noise, Maya. Real noise. One they can't silence. She blinked up at me, unsure if she could believe it. The next day I called the journalist again. You said they control the platforms. I told him fine. Then we'll go where they can't delete us. He hesitated. You mean live on camera? Yes, I said. We'll tell the story in our own words. No filters, no edits, no headlines, just truth. And that's how the idea was born. We would go live. Raw, UMPOLISHED, real. If the machine wanted to erase us, we would make ourselves unforgettable. We chose a Thursday evening, right after dinner when the world was scrolling, tired, distracted. It felt poetic somehow, to use the very rhythm of the algorithm against itself. Marcus set up the camera in the living room, the same room where Maya had once screamed, cried, and healed. Lydia fussed over the background, straightening cushions, dimming the lamp. She wanted everything to look peaceful, like our pain had order, but truth isn't orderly, it's jagged. So I left one cracked frame on the shelf, a reminder that perfection had never saved anyone. At 7:59 p.m., Marcus hit go live. The red light blinked. We were broadcasting to the world. I started slowly. My name is Richard Williams. I'm 76 years old, a retired teacher, and the grandfather to a 14-year-old girl named Maya. Maya sat beside me, hands clasped in her lap. Her eyes were steady, but I could see her heartbeat pulsing in her throat. For months, I continued. My granddaughter was fed a steady diet of despair by an algorithm designed to profit from her pain. We watched her vanish behind a screen while a system built by people with families of their own turned her sadness into engagement data. Comments began rolling in thousands within minutes. Hearts crying, emojis, clapping hands, but also venom. Fake story. Media stunt. Get over it still. I pressed on. She didn't find those images by accident, I said, holding up one of Maya's printed screenshots. They were delivered to her. Suggested, recommended, optimized because her pain made her valuable. Then I turned to Maya. Do you want to tell them what you told me that night? Her voice trembled but didn't break. I said the poison felt like home. The chat froze for a second, then messages flooded in. I know that feeling. Same. You're not alone. Maya continued. It's like it listens to you, like it knows what to say to make you stay. And even when you try to stop, it whispers that you'll be forgotten if you leave. That last line hit harder than any statistic could. Marcus leaned forward. We're not here to blame technology. We're here to demand responsibility. These companies know what they're doing. They've turned human emotion into currency. Lydia wiped tears from her cheeks, and we let them. Because it's easier to scroll than to see. The comments section exploded. Parents confessing. Teenagers typing frantic thank yous. People from around the world joining in. The stream count hit 50,000, then 100. We had started a movement without realizing it. But as the numbers climbed, something strange happened. The chat began to lag, then freeze. The viewer count dropped fast. Marcus frowned. It's glitching, he muttered. A message appeared on screen. Stream connection unstable. Attempting to reconnect, Lydia whispered. They're shutting us down. I stared at the frozen feed, our faces suspended mid-sentence, and said softly, let them try. Marcus switched the stream to a backup link on a smaller platform. Within seconds the chat was alive again, stronger, louder, angrier. The machine could silence platforms, but it couldn't de-silence people. The next morning, news outlets picked up the story. Family livestream exposed to social media manipulation. Hashtags flooded every site. Parents started sharing their children's stories, and for the first time the company stayed quiet. No denials, no press releases, just silence, the kind that sounds like fear. The week after the live stream felt like a dream we hadn't expected to survive. Every news outlet wanted interviews. Journalists, parents, teachers, doctors, everyone suddenly had something to say about the algorithm. But beneath the noise, something colder began to hum. A file arrived in my email 3 days later. No subject line, no signature, just a single encrypted attachment. Marcus hesitated. "Don't open it, Dad. It could be a scam." But curiosity. Duty-1. I opened it. Inside were hundreds of internal documents, graphs, emails, meeting notes, all stamped with the company's logo. And at the top of the first page, in plain text, were 5 words that made my skin crawl. Emotional engagement predictive model v3.4. I scrolled further. Every line was worse than the last. Users aged 13 to 17 show heightened sensitivity to approval. Metrics. Negative reinforcement yields longer engagement than positive content. Recommend distress-related posts after emotional triggers for maximum retention. Marcus read over my shoulder. "They're measuring pain," he said. I nodded, slowly. "Not measuring it, monetizing it." These weren't bugs or oversights. This was architecture. The system didn't go wrong. It went exactly right, by design. The deeper we read, the clearer the pattern became. The algorithm predicted sadness before users even felt it. It tracked heart rates through camera sensors, scrolling speed, even micro poses on certain images. It knew when someone was anxious, lonely, or self-conscious and adjusted the feed to hold them there. Lydia covered her mouth, whispering that turning emotions into experiments. But the worst part came near the end of the file. A section labeled Retention Booster Implementation Timeline. It listed projected increases in youth engagement following the introduction of depressive and body image-related content categories. Projected growth 47% over 18 months. Actual growth 63%. Maya sat silently at the table while we read. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but steady, so I was just Data. I reached across the table, taking her hand. "Double sweetheart. You were human." That's what they forgot. Marcus was already on the phone with the journalist. "We need to publish this," he said. All of it, but our friend on the other end hesitated. "This is explosive. Marcus, if we print it, we'll be sued. You'll be harassed. They'll bury us in court." "Then bury us," Marcus replied. "At least they'll have to dig." That night we debated until dawn. Lydia worried about Maya's safety, about her name becoming the headline again. I worried too, but silence felt worse. Finally Maya spoke. "If you don't share it, someone else's kid ends up where I was." She looked at me. "You always said truth matters more than comfort." And just like that, the decision was made. We sent the files, every document, every note, every ugly calculated line of code. Within 48 hours, the story exploded. Leaked documents revealed Teen Pain was a profitable target. Congressional hearings were announced. Investigations launched. Executives resigned. The algorithm that had learned to whisper despair into children's ears was finally being dragged into the light. But for me, the real victory came quietly one night, when I found Maya sitting on the porch again. No phone, No screen, just a notebook. What are you writing? I asked. She smiled faintly. My story, not the one they wrote for me. It's been a year since the night we went live. A year since the storm broke. Since our quiet house in Detroit became a headline, and our pain turned into a mirror, the whole world was forced to look into. Maya is 16 now, her hair's longer, her laugh fuller. She still goes to therapy, still has bad days, but they no longer swallow her whole. There are sketchbooks stacked on her desk, notebooks full of poetry, and a basketball leaning against her bedroom wall. The screens are still in our house. We didn't throw them out. We learned to tame them. Maya keeps a phone, but it's stripped of the apps that nearly destroyed her. She uses it to take pictures, sunsets, streetlights, her mother laughing over coffee. Real moments, she calls them. Proof that the world still exists outside pixels. The hearings that followed our story tore the curtain off an empire. Executives testified, shareholders squirmed, and for a brief moment, truth cut through the static. New laws were proposed, some even passed. But systems this big don't crumble overnight. They adapt, they rebrand, they promise safety updates. The machine is clever, it always was, but here's what it didn't count. On resistance that looks like love. After the live stream I started hearing from other families, letters, emails, even handwritten notes from kids who said, "Your story saved me." One line, written in shaky handwriting, still sits taped above my desk. I turned off my phone and saw my mom's face again. That single sentence became my sermon. I began speaking at schools, churches, libraries, unaware that would have me. Not as an activist, not as an expert, but as a grandfather who refused to let a machine raise his child. I told them that awareness isn't enough. We have to rebuild what the screen replaced. Conversations, walks, shared silence. Real touch. Marcus and Lydia found their footing again. The fear faded into purpose. Lydia now volunteers with a digital wellness group, teaching parents how to spot the signs we missed. Marcus mentors teens at the local rec center, showing them the same court where he once learned discipline from me. And Maya, she's the one who surprises me most. She's writing a book, The Algorithm That Ate My Heart. She says it's not a story about technology, but about hunger. The hunger to be seen, to be loved, to belong. The kind the internet promises, but can never feed. Sometimes I catch her staring at the sky, quiet and thoughtful. I asked her once what she thinks about when she does that. She smiled, about how I used to think the world was inside my phone, and now, I asked. Now, she said softly, I think the world is everyone holding each other when it breaks. I'm not naive. I know this fight isn't over. Somewhere tonight, another child is crawling through the same dark corners that almost took Maya from us. Somewhere, another family will ignore the signs, because that's what comfort does, it blinds. But maybe, just maybe, they'll stumble across our story first. Maybe they'll pause long enough to ask a question that could change everything. What if the world doesn't need more connection? What if it just needs more care? Maya's voice echoes in my mind. The same girl who once thought her pain made her invisible. Papa, the poison felt like home. It used to break me. Now I understand. Because healing means building a new home, one that no algorithm can design, no code can corrupt, and no darkness can erase. And that's where our story ends, not with silence, but with something louder: life. If this story touched you even for a moment, don't let it end here. I'm Richard, and these are more than stories. They're mirrors of what we live, what we lose, and what we fight to rebuild. Every voice matters here, every pain, every lesson, every spark of hope. So if you believe the world still needs real connection, hit that subscribe button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and join me in keeping these stories alive. Because here, on Richard Stories, we don't just tell what happened, we tell what still matters.